to our meeting this morning, which is a continuation of our meetings on matters rather related to allegations made by the former CEO of Eskom, Mr. Director. And you recall that the National Security Advisor to the President, Dr. Mufamadi, who was here this morning, was cited and named in one way or other, particularly along the lines of the naming or being informed about a politician or politicians or ministers involved in the Eskom corruption following the February 2023 interview that Mr. Director had with ENCA. So, Prof, we have met with Mr. Director following that interview that he had.
Yes.
And we've met with the board, we've met with law enforcement agencies, specifically the National Commissioner of Police and the head of the Hawks, and we've met with the Minister of Public Enterprises. And so this morning we are meeting with yourselves. What I'll do, colleagues, that we'll hand over to Prof if there's any initial remarks that he would want to make, and then we will go to questions. At Prof's request, he has requested that when we go to the question and answer session, it's one question, one response, for reasons which he has explained to me, and because it's consistent with the practice of the committee, I'm quite agreeable to that. So we will hand over to Professor Sidney Mufamadi, the National Security Advisor to the President, to make any initial comments or remarks, and then we will go to questions. Professor, over to you.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson Klangwa, and honorable members of the committee. Most of you will probably be aware that in my previous incarnation, I was a member of Parliament for about 15 years. So I am not a stranger to appearing before parliamentary committees to account then for the work I used to do as a member of Parliament, as Minister of Cabinet, and also to accompany members, senior managers of departments over which I had oversight responsibility. This time I'm appearing before the committee because I happen to have attended a meeting behind closed doors where certain things were said to me, and I'm aware that those things have since come into the public domain, and that the person who told me the matters about which you want me to say something today, Mr. Director, the former group CEO of Eskom, has already appeared before this committee. I am indeed ready to answer questions about the specific citation that was made by Mr. Director, and I hope that by so doing I will be of help to the committee. I am accompanied by my lawyer, Senior Counsel Azar Bam, who will assist me with the facilitation from the point of view of ensuring that as and when buttons need to be pressed to ensure that we remain in tune with each other from the point of view of connectivity, that does indeed happen. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee.
Thank you very much, Prof. All right. Colleagues, here's I have another list here. All right, let's start with Honorable Hadebe, because he has an engagement. And then, right, Honorable Hadebe, then H, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I hope I'm audible. As I indicated, colleagues, I'm already at Good Hope Center. I'm about to attend a physical meeting. So allow me to switch off my video, but here's the proof of life. It's Peggy Hadebe, Prof.
Yes, thank you.
The whip of the committee. Thank you so much for your time. Prof, please take us into confidence. Perhaps you would have seen and noted our interaction, SCOPA, in relation to these very serious and damning allegations arising from the interview of Mr. Director. In that interview, there's a specific investigation report and serious and damning allegations that were made. And as per the former Group Chief Executive, that report was also shared with you with the hope and understanding that it will find its way to the President. But strangely and more concerning is that that report, when we interacted and engaged with Eskom, Eskom has no sight of the report. The chair of the board has no sight of the report. Even the executive authority responsible for Eskom, Mr. Previn Jordan, the Minister of Public Enterprise, has no sight of the report. And in terms of what we know thus far and our engagement with various stakeholders who were alleged to be part one way or the other of these allegations, some of them have not also seen the report. It was not commissioned by Eskom. Private donors were used to fund this intelligence. And having served in intelligence, you would understand the authority and the prerogative of conducting intelligence operations in the country. So we want you to take us into confidence whether or not indeed you did see the report and its finding, and having seen the report and its finding, what were the steps taken to deal with the matter, whether or not you were aware and were you informed that this report was funded by private donors. Eskom were not privy or aware of the report, whether or not the report was classified, and if it was classified, meaning that there are certain information that are not for public consumption, and only those that have top security clearance will be in a position or have authority to access the report. So I want you, Prof, to just shed light. I'm raising this because as SCOPA, we have a responsibility. We are a watchdog of Parliament in issues pertaining to corruption and malfeasance, mismanagement of public funds. The report, as it being purported, highlights some of the misappropriation and mismanagement of taxpayers' money, hence our interest in the report and those that have received it, so that we understand what actions were taken, and if there were no actions taken, why not, so that we hold those who are entrusted to keep and protect the taxpayers' money accountable. As you well know and are aware that the Constitution enshrined the rights for Parliament to hold executive collectively and individually accountable, both in the exercise of their powers and functions. So I will leave it there for now and ask Prof to take us into confidence, because in a written submission by Mr. underwriter, he has stated categorically clear that the report was shared with you. So tell us the nature and the context of what you've seen, and it's in your possession, and whether or not such a report did manage indeed to find its way to the relevant authorities. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Prof, so I hope you've gotten the gist of
yes, I did. I did.
Because
yeah.
colleague, Prof. Fomadi had requested that we put one question at a time, but if you've gotten it, over to you and you can respond to what Honorable Hadebe has raised.
Yes. No, firstly, I need to say that if there was a hope that I will take the report to the president, such a hope was not expressed to me. The nature of the sharing of the report was not the handing over of the actual report. It took the form of Mr. Director telling us, and my sense was that it was correctly a synoptic presentation of what was contained in the report. So there was no report given to me which I would then carry and hand over to the president. I know that the honorable member's question was quite long, but I think, notwithstanding the shortness of my answer, I think I've dealt with the question.
Thank you, Prof. So in essence, when you're saying it was a synoptic report, so you were only given summary of what was contained on the report. You don't have the actual report in your disposal with the detailed recommendations and finding. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Did you at any stage request to see the report when you received the report? When you were briefed? Because I take it that it was just the word of mouth. Was it a meeting situation, or how was the report shared with you?
Yeah, well, as I say, it was in his office, and he was talking to clearly to some written report, and as I say, quite giving us a flavor of what was in the report. There was nothing to take away, but what was said to us was enough to enable me to give the advice which I then gave, namely that Mr. Director must interact with the law enforcement agencies. And as you know, law enforcement, it's a responsibility which is best carried out in a multi-agency setting. So I did say, well, from the presidency's side, we will make sure that should the law enforcement agencies need any support from the presidency as they do their work, such support will be forthcoming. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. So there were no further requests from the side of the former group chief executive to your good self, and was your advice taken, and was the undertaking that they will follow suit?
Yes, I can't say at what point did the interaction happen, but I spoke after that. After that meeting, I spoke to the National Commissioner of the South African Police Service, and I found that actually if I may put it that way, the police were ahead of the curve, because the matters that were being raised of the alleged, let me say, acts of criminality taking place in the power stations in Mpumalanga were already in hand, being investigated. And the commissioner did say, well, I'm in contact with Mr. Director. And I repeated to him what I said to Mr. Director, that if any point you need help, as you know, from the presidency, don't hesitate to get in touch with me. There is nothing that has since happened which tells me that that support is required.
So the statement by the president during the State of the Nation address, which relates to success and arrests being made based on some intelligence report, would you say that was also in line with what was shared with you? Was the report in one form or the other, besides what was shared with you, found its way to the president? Do you have such knowledge or recollection?
No, maybe I need to say that, you know, the president receives reports from any one of the intelligence agencies that we have, be it defense intelligence, crime intelligence, or civilian intelligence. I wouldn't know which specific report he was citing, because, as I say, he receives reports. So I am not in a position to say which one he was citing, and I hope you will then understand why I can't help you in this regard.
No, fair enough. So were you aware that this report was funded privately and Eskom did not commission the report? When this report was shared with you, was such information conveyed or clearly expressed to you?
Well, what I remember is that it was said that we commissioned the report. Now, you know, when you are invited to a meeting like that, you ask only those questions that require answers that enable you to do your own work. I did not ask who is we, who was commissioned, because that really was immaterial to my purposes.
Now I understand, and thank you so much. Would you perhaps recall exactly what time and when was this report or this meeting you are relating to took place? Was it 2022, June, July, November? If you can assist us with that recollection.
It's around July. It's around July. I would not have remembered the date, but I've since been told that Mr. Director says it was the 5th of July, 2023. And I take him on his word.
All right. I'm just trying to understand allegations of this magnitude. Didn't you see it necessary or fit to get hold of the actual report so that whatever intervention you made, at least you would be able to have a reference point? Because from time to time having one-on-one session meetings, some of the things we might miss along the way in executing our work. So you did not see any need, or there was no request or offer made to you to furnish you with the actual report?
No, I would not have made a request, because once I advised that Mr. Director works with the police, those are the people who do the investigation. My job, as you would know, involves helping the president to execute his national security responsibilities. It doesn't make me an investigating officer. It's really at a very strategic level where I operate and interact with the president.
Thank you so much. And lastly, since that meeting, were there any follow-up or update in regards to the report, or it was the first and the last of its kind? Did you receive any progress and indication that indeed your advice was executed and this is how far we are with the process? Or were there any frustration shared with you to say, after our meeting, Prof, I am frustrated by the lack of action from the law enforcement agents? Was such feedback shared or given to you?
No, there was no indication that there was either frustration or an indication of progress, because, you know, really no one is obliged to come back to me and report progress or the absence thereof, because, as you know, such reports have to be given to line function ministers and to your good selves at appropriate times. So I drive on my own lane, and I think the people did not come back to me because they know what my lane, which of the lanes belongs to me.
Thank you so much. And in also sticking to my lane, Chair, that will be the end of my questioning. Please allow me to join the other meeting as I move to fast lane. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honorable Van Minen, Honorable Mentor, stand by.
Can I go, Chair?
Yes.
Thank you.
The floor. Sure.
Thank you very much, and good morning. Good morning, Prof. Unfortunately, we have load shedding at the moment.
Oh.
Just turn my camera on. I am here, but I'd rather keep it off because of the issues with bandwidth, if that's okay. If I may please ask you, can you recall who was at the meeting where this was discussed? Just report.
Well, I was there, obviously, and Mr. Director was there, the Minister of Public Enterprises, and one of his advisors.
Thanks very much. And also, are you able to recall, was anything from the report discussed, or was it merely a conversation about the report without going into the details?
Yeah, well, I don't know what you mean by details, but we were given a sense of the extent of the, I'm saying a sense of the extent of the pervasiveness of the criminality, organized crime that was taking place in the power stations. And of course, one of what I know would be the issues of interest to this committee was any name dropping. Yes, there was. I can't remember the various designations that were used. On one hand, I understand Mr. Director talks about high-ranking minister, high-ranking political office bearer. On the other, he talks about a minister. I can at least say, yes, there was a mention of a name or names.
Thank you very much. Are you able to recall any of the names of apparent politicians who may have been involved, or at least against whom there are allegations?
I do, but I don't want to raise your hopes. I'm not prepared to mention those names.
Okay, so just to recap then, that you're saying that Minister Gordhan was present and that certain names were mentioned of people who are potentially high-ranking politicians.
Who are allegedly.
Allegedly.
Mm.
Okay. Was there any reaction from the other people at that meeting, in particular from Minister Gordhan?
Not that I can remember. Not that I can remember. I've since been made aware that Mr. Gordhan is supposed, according to what I'm told is a book subsequently written by Mr. Director, is supposed to have mentioned some words. And according to Mr. Director, he was directing himself to me. But I'm saying I have no recollection of such happening. And I'm made aware also that although Mr. Director says the words were directed at me, he doesn't say that I responded.
Okay, so you're saying, Professor, that you don't recall any of the words allegedly said by the minister in response to the names that were mentioned?
Yes.
Okay. What is a bit concerning in the last few weeks, and we've had conversations with a number of law enforcement agencies, as well as the board and with the minister himself, is that there seems to be the view that nothing new was brought up by Mr. Director in terms of what was going on with Eskom. In terms of that, from your perspective, obviously, you can only answer from that perspective, was the impression that you got that at this meeting that there was already knowledge of these names and this problem, or not?
Well, let me start this way. When somebody says there's nothing new, I wouldn't know, especially because I guess you are quoting people who were talking to this committee. I wouldn't know whether they're talking about newness in relation to the names mentioned, or nothing new in relation to the totality of the report, as I say, plus or minus the names. But also, you know, 4 people can be sitting in a meeting, such as was the case in this instance. They don't all have the same knowledge about the subject matter. So to someone, there may be nothing new at all because they've got other sources of information. Yet to someone else, there may be new things arising out of that report. So I'm just saying that whoever may have said there's nothing new should not be seen to be saying that in a representative capacity, representing everybody's opinion.
In terms of the law enforcement agencies, and as you've said, you advised Mr. De Ruyter to take it up with the law enforcement agencies. Would you expect those law enforcement agencies to actually follow up on such information as was provided by Mr. De Ruyter in this report?
Sure, I do.
Okay, because what is concerning is that when we met with the Hawks, I think that was 2 weeks ago, there didn't appear to be much drive to actually rigorously investigate what has been alleged and put into the arena, really.
Well, the Hawks, you know that they are part of the SAPS.
Yes. Unfortunately, I don't think that Scopa was terribly impressed with the commitment shown by SAPS to this particular point. But I mean, that's
yes.
Following up.
You must share that disappointment with the Committee on Policing, because if you were talking to the commissioner and his team and the minister was there, they need to account for their performance in that regard.
Indeed. So I just want to then double check. So your advice to Mr. De Ruyter then was to pursue the channels that you've previously mentioned, including forwarding the report to the president?
Yes.
And in terms of what he may have done subsequently, do you bear any knowledge of that?
Well, when I spoke to the commissioner said, well, the matters are in hand and I am in touch with Mr. De Ruyter. That was enough of an assurance for me.
Okay, thanks very much. Chair, I think for now, I've asked my questions. I might have some questions later. Thank you. And thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you very much, Madam.
Thanks, Honorable Van Minen. Honorable Mente.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if you can miss where network is kicking me out now and then. My good.
Oof, your network is not
Okay.
great. All right, try pose your questions.
Okay, no.
And then if you get lost, we will. Yeah. All right, Honorable
Let
Mente.
me try and connect with
try.
another network.
Okay, you're audible now. Just stay where you are and proceed.
Let me propose here that take a next person. I'm trying
Okay.
to get to another network.
All right, cool. All right, no problem. Colleagues, I don't have the next. All right, let's do this. Prof.
Chair.
Yes, Madam. Yes, sir.
Honorable Bucas, over to you. Let's
Okay,
take Honorable Bucas. Yeah, all right.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Prof, for your clarifications.
Yes,
Prof, from what you are saying, you never see the actual intelligence report. Is that what you are saying?
Yeah, sure. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So, Prof, I understand that no one is obliged to come back to you to follow up on certain or previous discussions. As you were saying, it's not in your, for a better word, in your lane. It's not in your job description. So what I want to know, Prof, is why do you think Mr. De Ruyter come to you in the first place, or why were you part of that delegation with Minister Kodan, and what did he expect from you in that meeting? What was his, according to him, what was his expectations from you?
Yes, two things about that. The invitation to the meeting, for me to attend the meeting, came from Minister Godan, who said to me he's going to be receiving a report from Mr. and he's asking me to please come with, so that should there be a need for a decision or decisions to be taken after that briefing, I can give him some advice. So that is the basis on which I went. I understand now that in the book, in Mr. Director's book, he says that he asked Mr. Godan to invite me to the meeting. I was not aware that he asked Mr. Godan to invite me to the meeting. What I was aware is that I was invited to the meeting by Mr. Godan.
Okay, so on your side, according to you, the invite came from Minister Godan and not from the Rater.
I'm not saying not from the Rater, because Mr. Director says in the book, I'm told, that he asked Mr. Godan to invite me. Yes.
Okay. So, Prof, in that meeting, did the Rater speak to you about the donors for the private investigation?
No, I learned subsequently about the donors. No.
The donors.
I learned subsequently in the media. And by the way, as to who the donors were, I think it was even after his appearance before your committee. Then I learned as matters were coming more and more into the public domain as to who the donors are.
I don't understand. What do you say about, you know who the donors are? Or
I'm saying I learned like everybody did through the media.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Prof, I know, but it's from my side to you, a personal question. What is your personal view on that investigation and the intelligence report? And maybe I can ask the next question also, Prof. What do you think about the donors? Why are they numb? And Mr. The Rater speak about everyone in his book, but he's not speaking about the donors. Do you think maybe the donors, they are the missing link? Because we are now back and forth. We have meetings, we're asking, but the thing is, we don't know. Everything is mysterious about the donors. Do you think, I know, maybe I can't ask you this question, but I just want to know your view on this.
Maybe you can ask me this question, but I'm also happier to have learned that you are intending to call him back to appear before the committee. So you've got another bite on the cherry.
Okay. According to you, also you say that Mr. The Rater said we.
Yeah.
And then you assume that it is the board. But
no, I didn't make any assumption at all. I didn't think there was a necessity, as I say, for my purposes, to know who the we were.
Okay. Chair, I'm done. Thank you. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Madam Bukes.
All right, thank you very much. Right. Honorable Mente, I'm not sure if she's back trying to log in. I just want to follow up on a few things that, Prof, you have raised for clarity, and then colleagues will continue.
Yes.
Prof, let's start where Honorable Bukes leaves off. I get the notion that you say we will call Mr. Director back, but I just want to present a case to you. Mr. Godan last week categorically makes the statement that we have what he would call state capture 2, right, at this point, right? I've termed it in other platforms that we must not make the assumption that state capture is over, right? Now, I'm just trying to now gauge from you whether in your assessment, having learned what you have learned up to now, that there was private donations into an intelligence gathering exercise at an SOE, whether that can be deemed acceptable. Because I think where Honorable Bucas is coming from is that we remain fundamentally concerned that, one, the law enforcement agencies are not moving with the necessary traction. I can put it to you in your capacity as the National Security Advisor that we are not happy with the SSA, but I'm not here to debate or engage in the merits and demerits of that case. That's for another day. But we're not happy for a host of reasons. Now, Mr. Derrida was not vetted, right, up until he left his position as the CEO. So where we have an issue, the number of my question now is, you have an SOE and its CEO unvetted engages in intelligence gathering on the basis of private funding, and it has emerged now that this was not a board decision. And so we would really want to get an assessment from yourself as to whether that is something to be concerned about and why we should be concerned about it. Because, yeah, so let me leave it at that, because you received a briefing in July and the law enforcement agencies say Mr. Derrida only made a submission to them in writing in April 2023, notwithstanding the discussions with Brigadier Berger that took place, but that in writing. So it's 9 months after you had been briefed on what I assume was this report. So I think your insight and assessment into that key critical aspect would be helpful. I'm just building on what Honorable Bucas has said. Over to you, Prof.
Chair, I want to respectfully suggest this. You know, my role definition is something that I put on the table up front. So I advise the President on matters, some of which are matters we are raising right now. And I know that you correctly are trying to get to the bottom of this matter. I know that if you want advice from the parliamentary system, you will get it. I suggest that on matters that I advise the President, I should not repeat the advice I gave to the President on this platform, but also because I know that you don't have a paucity of sources of advice as this committee. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Honorable Somi, I'll come to you. Can I just clarify another matter?
Yeah.
Prof, you indicate that, this is just for clarity now, the meeting you were called to or invited to by Minister Godan,
Yes.
were invited to it for the purposes of a briefing. Now, was any documentation circulated or presented to yourselves in that meeting, or it was a paperless briefing? It's because we are trying to establish where's the report.
It was not paperless to the extent that now my recollection in terms of precision is receding, but to the extent that he seemed to be reading from some document, I'm saying to that extent it was not paperless, but I certainly did not walk away from that meeting with a document.
Okay, and then finally, so you would you say, Prof, that this meeting you were at was not in passing, because the impression we have been given is that this briefing was in passing, which, by the way, there's security matters. So this meeting was precisely called, in terms of your recollection, on the basis that you were being briefed on these matters. So it was not a by the way, or arising maybe if you had an agenda on general. It was specific on the issues that there was security matters.
Yeah, it was not the type of meeting which opens with a guess what. I mean, we drove to the meeting. So it was a meeting. It was a serious meeting.
Okay. Prof, finally,
yes,
the issue is this. We are seated with a situation where Mr. Tereta alleges that he informed you and Minister Godan of senior politicians or senior political actors or ministers, whatever categorization. Now, you say that you won't name them. Right. We have issue with that from yourself, Mr. Tereta, and Minister Godan, that these persons are not being named. But maybe that is secondary for the purposes of this exercise. What is of interest to us?
Oh, sorry.
These individuals reported to law enforcement agencies, because I would imagine if they are cited in terms of a report or a briefing, which was, as you say, it was a serious meeting, a formal meeting. So in a formal meeting, the CEO of an SOE, strategic as Eskom, indicates to yourselves that there is these individuals. Is it not of interest to you that they are reported, that they are investigated? And I'm trying to gauge, are the individuals cited ministers? Because if they were, I would imagine then that the president must be briefed about a serious allegation, because it was made in a formal meeting.
Okay, sure. And let me deal with that, because I think it will help us to cross the line that it seems has not been crossed. You see, when names are mentioned in a context such as the one we are referring to, and the advice that is given, at least by me, is the one which says, please interact with the law enforcement agencies. It's something that a person of my political and strategic experience should bring to processes like this. You expect, once investigations take place, that when the investigations reach a certain level of optimism, In other words, once the investigators are satisfied that they have verified everything that needs to be verified, they will make the determination as to who needs to be informed, and the time appropriateness is also a factor. You can imagine, in the position in which I sit, sometimes people are under the misapprehension that they can tell me things, and other times they tell me things and I know where to direct them to. If I become excitable and start talking about names of people who are being suspected and so on, it's either I will be doing an injustice to those people or I'll be undermining investigations. So I know some people have even asked, did you tell the president? I have made sure that the people who are competent to make those sorts of judgments as to by when should who be informed are themselves put in touch with those who have the information in the first place. So I think from where you sit, you will understand where I'm coming from.
Okay, thanks, Prof. I will come back. I just wanted to clarify those matters that arose out of the questions that members had been asked. Okay, Honorable Somyo, can I crave your indulgence that you stand by and we allow Honorable Mende, because she's got connectivity issues, so that while she's got network, she can proceed. Honorable Mende, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to everyone in the meeting. Chair, thank you. Now that we have established that the meeting was a formal meeting, it was not a meeting in person, and an agenda was shared amongst the parties that were in a meeting. I want to beg the pardon of the professor in enlisting the people who attended the meeting. Do you have a recollection of who else was in the meeting on that particular day? That's my first question.
Yes, I thought I mentioned them in the beginning. Mr. Director, myself, Minister Godan, and one of his advisors. I can't immediately remember who the advisor was, but whoever was keeping the register would be of assistance in this regard.
Thank you very much. Was the chairperson of the board supposed to attend the meeting on that particular day, or the meeting was not of use for him, or he was not an invitee of that particular meeting?
I had no role in planning the meeting, so I don't know who else was invited, who declined, who turned down the invitation. I don't know.
Honorable Mende, maybe just for clarity, I think it was when you were just having that disruption, the Prof has indicated that he was invited to that meeting by Minister Godan. And so his role would be limited to only being invited. It was not his meeting. It was a meeting, but he has subsequently learned that it was Mr. Director who had asked that he be invited. So he was an invitee at that meeting. So I just want to clarify that, because I think it was during that time when you were having that network issue.
Thanks, Chairman.
All right. Thank you very much, Chairperson. So this then clarifies my next question. And
Please bear with me, Professor, because I want to get to the bottom of what I want to understand. So this then clarifies that this is not a normal session wherein you get feedback or progress where Eskom is concerned. This was a once-off. Am I correct?
Yes, except that I did indicate that as I was advising Mr. Director to interact with the law enforcement agencies, I did indicate that should at any point a need be felt for the support of the presidency, none of the involved parties should hesitate to indicate that need.
All right. Okay, I hear you. Now that you attended the meeting and there was this particular briefing, and I don't want to assume that the meeting was on matters of Eskom pertaining to criminality or rather broader Eskom issues that you had to hear in order for you to pass them to the president. Now, my question is, when he shared whatever information that he shared pertaining to Eskom, was it for the purpose of you passing the information to the president, or was it for the purpose of you understanding them and advising him, or rather take it directly to the structures where it should go to, like the police or the office of the president, whoever is handling the matters of Eskom? What was the purpose of him giving you this information to your understanding?
Well, Eskom has got unmediated interaction with the presidency, not through me. And as I said, if there was a hope that I will take the report to the president, that hope was not expressed to me. What I was asked to come to the meeting for was in the event where the minister feels that at the meeting he needs my advice about what to do after receiving the report, I should give that advice to the minister and by extension to Mr. Director. And that is the advice I gave.
All right, that helps us. But then I will go back to the question that the chairperson was clarifying with you,
Yes,
that of the names. In this particular briefing, then names came up and you advised on what was the process. What did exactly you advise the minister to do where his colleagues are concerned, meaning the cabinet members that were exposed or declared in that meeting as being involved in the criminal activities of Eskom? And what was your advice to Director in terms of dealing with the names that he was disclosing to you at that moment?
Madam, you say as being involved, allegedly being involved, isn't it, at that stage? Allegedly being involved. Well, my advice was not specific to paragraphs or names. It was about the report, to say, please interact with the law enforcement agencies about the report. The operative understanding is that those are the people who will then investigate. So you don't isolate elements of the report and say, do this about that one, do this about this one, because you you are referring them to the appropriate people who will then look at the report in its entirety. Thanks, Madam.
All right, thank you. I remember now in the beginning when you were explaining, you explained a variety of reports that
Yeah.
are in terms of intelligence. Am I correct to say the report that was given to you by Director, or rather the briefing, was indicated that it emanates from a particular report? So am I correct to say your reference to variety of reports validates the fact that you didn't know exactly which report he was talking to?
When I made reference to reports, it was in the context where I was asked that when the president spoke in Parliament and he then said, referred to investigations and in the same breath referred to an intelligence report, I said I would not know which intelligence report he was referring to, because I take it as a given, and I think we will agree, that he receives reports from a variety of intelligence sources, defense intelligence, crime intelligence, SSA, and therefore I am saying I don't know which report he was referring to, the president.
Oh, okay. But in terms of that meeting, in a context of that meeting, now that I'm clarified, in the context of that meeting, did he specifically say what intelligence report he was referring to when he was briefing you about the activities, or rather the content of that report?
He said we commissioned a report. But as I was said in the beginning, I said, for my purposes, I did not have to know who he meant by we. And I did not have to know who sponsored the work and so on. I really did not have to know who are the people that are associated with the report and so on. Because for me, the judgment I needed to make was based on what is the nature of the issues that are under investigation. That was really the basis on which I would feel comfortable to make a judgment.
Okay. You're saying your advice became that he must approach law enforcement to do investigation on the matters he raised with you. In his submission to us, he said he met with the law enforcement, and subsequent to that, he met with yourself. He says, on the same date, I reported the findings to the shareholder representative, that's the minister, to National Security Advisor, to Dr. Sidney Mufamadi. So, simply, to our understanding, he had already met with the National Police Commissioner. Did he share with you that he had already met with the National Commissioner and there are already investigations that are taking place?
Well, if you recall in the beginning, I don't know at what point did you join the meeting. I said in the beginning, earlier on, that when I spoke to the National Commissioner, the Commissioner said the matter is in hand. I'm in touch with Mr. Director. So I did even use the words I gathered from the National Commissioner that they were already ahead of the curve. I was happy about that, but I reiterated the commitment to be of help should the need arise for help. so that it could also, I was actually reiterating it as something that was not a new commitment, it's a standing commitment that is known to the agencies.
All right. No, thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Madam.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Mente. Honorable Somia.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and good morning, Prof.
Morning, Honorable Somia.
Yes, the context is a bit different. I hope you still recall Imvoza Bantsundu. Kubanjwe umuntu nomvenda.
Yes.
Yeah. The context is a bit different. This is a friendly context.
Yeah. No, sure, I'm at home.
Yeah, no, you're really true. Prof, you have said in a number of instances in your sessions that you provide security advice to the president, and taking your word, knowing very well that you are in that office in terms of providing that advice. I take it that Eskom has been one of the interesting elements of that kind of work that you provide. Is that not so?
Yeah, sure, but yeah, no, it has been. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, because I'm driving a point there, Prof, that currently we've got serious challenges in terms of energy, and the absence of such would lead or is a driver of serious threat to security of the country in a number of ways. Is that not the point?
Yes, it is.
How many times have you met with Mr. Director? Was it for the first time that you met with him, or the last time that you met with him?
Well, I think it was the first time I met with him. Maybe I need to make the point so that if I understand where you are going, then things should become clear.
Okay.
Yes, as I was saying, I am there in this role to advise the president in order to enable him to execute his national security responsibilities. And as you would know, issues of national security have got both the domestic and international dimension. I don't have a very, very big office, but I have to make sure that we track from that office developments in the sub-region, in the region, in the country, and globally, and make them strategically, the information that we do research at that level, strategically intelligible. So there is no expectation from the president that I will be meeting so many individuals 4 or 5 times and so on. So yes, I met Mr. Director. I've met him, I've seen him in meetings where he comes to brief policymakers about his work. but seen him from that sort of distance. So unless I misunderstood where you are going,
don't go where I'm going. Let's just focus on what I'm saying now.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Don't worry.
Yes. I wouldn't really remember all the time that I'm meeting him again. I'm meeting him here, so I wouldn't.
Yeah. You see, I'm asking these questions as well, knowing you, Prof, in various capacities.
Yes.
You know, the country, well, the cabinet has a number of resolutions, and there are a number of telling decisions on various matters,
Yes.
which are of a security nature, and some of them emanate from various critical information or documents that might get into your hand, and then you make your own analysis around such, and then provide that kind of advice. You see, you then refer to a report. You are briefed about a report, and you never received a report. Do you take your briefing, the synopsis that you receive, as an intelligence a report emanating from an intelligence report?
No, I don't regard everything that I'm told as intelligence report or intelligence. But if somebody says, what I'm talking to you now is from an affidavit, I don't say, show me who signed it and so on, unless that is necessary for purposes of what I need to decide. If somebody says, I'm telling you something from an intelligence report, what I have to determine is what should happen to that which I'm being told. And in this instance, I think I told the committee that I advised that it be shared with the intelligence agencies. I mean, the law enforcement agencies. So I don't regard everything that is whispered to my ear as intelligence.
No, I'm asking that question specifically. This is termed, widely publicized, an intelligence report. You take this report and you have assimilated it as such, and you have taken its own facts as such, wherever you have gone to the police or whatever, in terms of that kind of questioning it as an intelligence report?
Not quite, except that I refer it to the people who will make that determination in order for them to determine the next step. If the police thought it's not an intelligence report, they would dismiss it as such. But it was not up to me to say this is an intelligence report or not an intelligence report. You have to bear in mind that we are talking here to the CEO of Eskom. Surely it's somebody you can take on his word. But the rest of the issues have to be verified. And that's why I referred this to the people who have the competence to do such verification.
Prof, you handle matters of security, matters of intelligence. You are a writer of report in terms of your review process as a hailed outcome, in terms of the review of SSA and all that stuff. I'm asking this question pertinently into that fact that here you are taken into the meeting, you listen to the information. Yes, you would verify some information, but your actual assimilation of that report and the publicity of such thereafter, and now it exists in the shelves as intelligence report. Do you take that as intelligence report?
I'm not sure about the fairness of your question, because I think I said to you that I referred it to where it would be subjected to verification. It was not my task to verify anything at that stage. My task was to make sure that such people as are competent to do the verification are brought into the equation. And that's what I did. So it's neither here nor there as to whether I thought it's an intelligence report or not. Because as I said, I was given a synoptic indication of the allegations that existed, and I referred them to the people who should deal with them.
Cabinet at some stage, I think 2013, took a decision for those who are employed in various positions to be vetted.
Yes.
Yes. In your full or in your understanding, is that resolution with all fairness being followed up to its own logical conclusion by various platforms which are supposed to implement such, and in your own analysis, what do you think needs to be done to effect such a resolution? Mainly on vetting of
yeah, let me say this. Let me show you this. You are referring me to 2013. You referring me to some work that I was asked to do before I got appointed into this position. What I can say to you is that in the context of that work, which I did in 2018 as part of a panel which was looking into SSA, a number of things were identified which needed to be attended to by way of recommendation to the president, which needed to be attended to in order to make sure that a repeat of some of the things that were identified to have happened, which should not happen if we are to have a national security at its most assuring level. So those things were identified, and in the current post in which I am, I know that the National Security Council has noted that the president adopted the reports that were submitted with their recommendations and so on, as formulated a programmatic response to the recommendations that were made. And there is periodic reporting that happens at the National Security Council about where each of those issues are. So there are varying levels of progress with respect to each one of them. I'm not in a position sitting here to say to you, this is exactly the level of progress that has been achieved in respect of this aspect or that aspect. I think it's a matter that maybe this committee or the relevant committee needs to call up in order to assess how progress is unfolding in that regard.
Okay. No. Thanks, Prof.
Thanks.
Mr. Director is on record saying that he does not trust the SAPS nor SSA. Did he inform you this as part of that summation, providing that report?
No, he did not.
He did not say that to yourselves at the time.
Yeah.
And are you aware, or were you aware that Mr. Director has not been vetted?
No.
So you are not aware?
No.
That is not vetted?
No. I mean, those things are not reported to me in the first instance.
Yes. He confirms that even in his book, and when the minister was asked the same question, he has a view which he expressed that he could not provide his own financial information to SSA because he does not trust SSA. Has that come to your ear at some stage?
No, as I say, those things don't get reported to me. The minister may be saying it from the vantage position of being the line function minister for the department, for the entity in which Mr. Director was serving.
Now that you are aware that indeed he has never been vetted, having to operate at that level, one of the key legislations which relate to key critical infrastructure as signed off in 2019, something which Eskom benefits from in terms of its defines. What could you say about individuals who occupy such offices who have not been provided such a sense in terms of security clearance?
Well, I remember I said something about this issue and other issues which have been put into a programmatic template for the work of the National Security Council. I think about this specific matter, it's good that this process is taking place because it will give, I guess, all concerned a basis from which to determine what to say about it in and of itself, but also in relation to the work that is being done in these entities.
Has he ever made any reference in terms of who was involved in terms of the actual work around the processes of the report was briefing you on? That those were involved in the investigation and led to the outcomes that he was exposing to yourselves?
Yes, he spoke about a company that is involved, and it has also been conversed here in this committee and elsewhere. if I can make a friendly request, please don't ask me whether I have or have not taken interest in that question, because then you would be asking me to talk about things I shouldn't be talking about on this
So you
platform.
don't want
On this platform, which is
on this platform.
yeah,
On this. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. But
You have to bear in mind that we are in the public domain as well.
yes. No. I'm persuaded because you are committed to speak about in a different platform and not necessarily this platform. So I'm persuaded to hold them within what you have said, Prof. And you know the intention of holding this kind of a session with people like yourselves is as well informed by the fact that would want to say at the end some of the things should not happen. They should happen in a particular way.
Sure.
Now that you know that indeed some of the things which ought to have not happened this way have happened that way. The outcomes of what now you term you're given synopsis was led into a number of things. One of those things, now we know that a certain company was appointed for security. And we know for a fact, and I'm definitely sure you know, that any security company which is involved in some form of a commitment to work within the defines of critical infrastructure are supposed to be thoroughly vetted and receive clearance, security clearance accordingly. You see, now we know for a fact, highly publicized, that one of the outcomes of that report, which we were briefed about, was the appointment of security with a cost of 500 million rand, something which we know now, in that instance. As an individual who provides such advice, which relate to matters of security and the necessity of that security, specifically for Eskom and its own infrastructure. What do you take out of such outcomes, which are a result of a report which you say yourself is subject to verification because you had to take to some other institutions for that kind of verification?
Mr. Somio, if you were the president and you were asking me that question at an appropriate place, I was going to give you an answer.
Yes, so you have an answer.
Sorry? No, but I mean, even earlier, I did say to, I said to the chairman, there is advice that I give to the president by virtue of what I'm doing. If you're asking me for my advice, and I say, you guys have got plenty of resources to get that advice, allow me also to give advice where I appropriately have to give it.
So there's no time that Director informed you that because of this kind of a report, he's procuring that security.
No, he didn't. He didn't. Or maybe let me say this. I mean, the things you learned publicly, how much this cost and so on, are things that I also learned the same way as you did.
Okay. Is it wise to use a private intelligence sources for this kind of work, which we are now dealing with here in terms of your deep knowledge about these matters?
Well, you know, I wouldn't give a blanket answer to that question, because if you saw the report that was issued by a panel which was appointed in the immediate aftermath of the upheavals of July 2021, July 2021, in KZN and Gauteng, there was a recommendation about the need to use resources, public and private, in order to ensure that we get on top of the stability challenges that we are facing as a country. And indeed, I know that the National Security Council did say it encourages collaboration, encourages the state entities that deal with security matters to collaborate with the private security industry. And now, there are questions of principle and questions of detail. So when you go into detail, you will then say, how do we make sure that this collaboration does take place and that it meaningfully adds to the efforts we are making, bring about stability in the country? What are the opportunities we see? What are the challenges, the threats we see? How do we de-risk this undertakings and so on? So I'm saying those are questions of detail. But as I was saying, I think it will be wrong to try and find a no-yes answer on the basis of a blanket in-principle position.
So there's no informing legislative environment around the utilization of the private intelligence entities for that kind.
Yeah, it's probably one of the issues, as I say, if you go into that programmatic template, it may well be one of the issues that are in the works. But I'm saying also that you will have to talk more about discretions, that the discretionary effort that goes into organizing such relations, because there are instances where things were done and they worked well, and there are also instances where there were problems. What do we learn from both cases? What are the takeaways? So it's a process in which, especially if you are venturing into a new way of operating, where there will have to be some learning by doing.
Prof, I think this is a very critical point, which when providing that kind of an advice in the highest office in the main, that the country establishes its own agency, in this instance SSA, and its own existence and its own capacity provision, building its own trust, and effectively ensuring that the agency itself does its own work with a full support in terms of projecting its own success factors in a number of environments. Here is the man who says, I don't trust these people, I don't trust these agencies, and therefore let me have a selection of an entity which ought to do this work, which is now in possession of that report, which got into access of that critical infrastructure, and there is a legislated environment for such restricted access, and thereafter a number of decisions ought to be taken based on the outcome of that work. The South Africa as a constitutional state, in its own observance of a regulated environment becoming so critical, and then if we are lax around such elements, leading into waning authority of agencies, something which should not be perpetuated in a way. You stand to pen that kind of an assertion, and here we are. We're talking about the men who have made use of the elements of what you yourself have subjected your time, your energy, in terms of assessing the existence of that agency, wanting to propagate for its own power and authority. And here now, we're talking about something which is floundering around such a kind of a scenario. What is your view?
No, I think a number of
just Babs, I'm going to ask you to wrap up so we can move on to the
this is my second last point.
Okay.
No, Chair, I need to say this. Given where we come from, you were talking about period of state capture, the extent to which that has weakened organs of state, including law enforcement organs. There is a conscious program and effort to address that issue on an ongoing basis. You will have noted that there are steps that were taken to train, I'm just giving that as an example, more personnel dedicated to public order policing, more personnel dedicated to crime intelligence, steps taken to beef up the intelligence services and so on. So this is ongoing work. Of course, room for improvement, as you would know, is the biggest room in the world. You can't say we have everything it takes to do everything we have to do. Hence, you must also develop the capacity to know how to leverage capacities that may even lie outside your own stable, as it were. It must be part of the competence that is inbuilt into these institutions. So everything of the sort that you are suggesting should happen, I am saying it's happening. what has to happen is to assess the effectiveness of these measures as we go forward. And I thought I was giving you the assurance that that is happening. I don't know the basis on which Mr. Director says he doesn't trust the police. Is he saying he doesn't trust them because he thinks they are incompetent? Or is he saying that he doesn't trust them because they are inherently untrustworthy? I don't know, because he didn't discuss that matter with me. Thanks.
Thanks, Prof. My last point is relating to what we have said, that after that meeting you had, you went to meet the commissioner of police, and when you engaged the commissioner of police, you found out that he's ahead. They are ahead as the police service on the matters which have been raised with yourselves. Were they ahead because they got an alert on such matters from that report by Mr. Terete, or were they ahead because inherently they were doing their work and matters of Eskom were found on their own radar, and therefore they were dealing with those matters inadvertently, in a way?
Yes, it's not either or. They were ahead in the sense that the matters of criminality in the power stations in Mpumalanga were under investigation already. But he also said, I am in touch with Mr. Director. So on both counts, I was in that sense given to understand that they were ahead of the curve.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. So.
Thanks, Professor Moore. We'll come back, colleagues. I think we've got a little bit of time. Honorable Liz.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. As you can see, I'm sitting in my car. And good morning, Professor Mufamadi. It's good to see you. And yeah, good to be able to chat to you.
Yes, Mr.
I hope you are well. And yeah, all I want to say to you, Prof, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the opportunity, is that it's been an interesting morning and I really want to commend you and thank you for responding to the questions in as much as you have been able to. I mean, there are a couple of that you've declined to, and you've given us good reasons why you can't reply to some or give us some of the information. And you haven't obfuscated and beat about the bush. And I really just want to express my appreciation for the manner in which you've dealt with this committee, which can be a very fractious one, although this morning I think we've been very polite and haven't been fractious. So that's my input. I've learned a great deal from you this morning. Thank you very much. But the main thrust is to thank you for the way that you have indeed responded to us. It is very refreshing. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I hope we'll perhaps have a cup of coffee together sometime. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Mr. Nis. And thank you indeed for being polite with me, because, you know, nowadays you pick up high blood pressure and other problems when people are impolite with you. Thank you very much, Mr. Nis.
I can assure you, Prof, we are always polite. Let's be lest we run the risk of being accused of inducing national blood pressure. Right. Honorable Hateb has got a follow-up, and then Babsob, if there's any other follow-ups on your side. And then I just want to wrap it up with a few questions. Honorable Hatebe.
Thank you, Chair. It's precisely because we have stayed on our lane, Prof. Hence, we are polite. Now, Prof, having chaired the high-level review panel report on state security agents, would you say, in terms of delivering the final product to whoever the report was destined to, having said to us, you were called by the executive authority, the minister, to accompany him, and in an event where advice will be needed, you would do so. Do you think the report was tabled in a manner that is supposed to have been handled when this matter was presented to the Minister of Public Enterprise, where you would only be finished with a synopsis report? Do you think that was an appropriate steps to follow in tabling such a report? I mean, if I were to be invited in a meeting, in that meeting we're dealing with sensitive matters and matters of serious concern in relation to the country, one would have expected, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that an executive authority would have been finished with such a report. I know now that you left that meeting without having had a report. Did the minister left the meeting with a report?
Yeah, well, you know, the assumption that I make in situations like that is that here is a CEO who reports to the minister. Now, they have an ongoing relationship. Now, I am, from that point of view, an outsider. It is also possible that the minister was briefed before. I'm saying I make that general assumption, and I wouldn't begrudge them if they had had discussions before on the report. And now they are bringing me in order to give advice, as the minister said, and they are letting me in on a need-to-know basis. Because as I said, I did not have to know everything that is in the report to make the judgment as to what should happen next to the report. So if that was their attitude, that they are doing it on the need-to-know basis, I think they were handling the matter appropriately, if that was the basis.
Now, I don't want to belabor the point. I just wanted to ascertain whether or not our understanding is accurate, because all I wanted to ascertain was whether or not in that meeting, when the meeting was concluded, there were exchange of certain documentation. But I understand, and I would accept if you don't have such a recollection. And I was merely asking, based on your experience, that having checked the high-level review panel report, you would finish an accounting officer or an executive authority with a detailed written report with full recommendation.
Yes, although I don't know what recommendations he would have made to his minister in that regard, because the sense I had was that these are things to do with alleged activities of criminality on the ground. The minister doesn't get, I mean, you will recall that I was Minister for Safety and Security. When investigations are being done and so on, they are taken to, at the right time, information is taken to the prosecuting authorities to determine whether they should, what is the word? They should prosecute or not. So, contrary to the appearance, that people may have from a distance. Ministers don't get detailed reports about investigations and then decide whether so and so should be prosecuted or not.
Thank you, Prof. I have no further questions.
Thanks, Mr. Ade.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Ladebert. Colleagues, any other questions? Right. Prof, just a few clarities on issues you've raised.
Yes, sir.
You indicate that the meeting which you had with the Minister Godan and Mr. Tereta, you were invited. In what capacity were you invited to that meeting, and for what purpose?
Well, the capacity I took for granted, that was of National Security Advisor. And the minister was saying to me, I'm going to be receiving a report. Should the need arise, as I said, for me to decide what to do, well, I can't remember whether it was for us to decide or for me what to do, you could advise. And that's what I ended up doing.
So, in your capacity as the National Security Advisor to the President?
Yes, let me also say this. I'm National Security Advisor to the President, but I understand that issues on the ground do not always wait for processes and so on. So on one thing or the other, a minister, a DG may seek my advice. Therefore, I'm a resource available to the government in that sense. You can also stop me in the street and say, you are National Security Advisor. I have got this issue. Can you give me advice? If I have time and some wisdom to share, I do share.
Okay. So that opens another door for me momentarily, Prof.
Yes.
I would imagine then, however, that the President being your appointing authority, that from time to time, you are to brief the President. Where I have an issue is that officially a meeting is called, a report is discussed, and it alleges, following, Prof, mind you, that the President at some point cut a trip short abroad and came back to the country to deal with Eskom matters, where he spoke categorically of there being sabotage at Eskom. So I would imagine that already there is heightened sensitivity around Eskom with the President and the Presidency and his team, which would be inclusive of yourself. And the CEO of Eskom says there are individuals, politicians or ministers, who are alleged now to be involved in the problems, and I use the term problems reservedly just for the purposes of flexibility, or euphemistically to whatever characterization may have been applied. And then the President is not informed about what I would imagine to be that, one, there's an existence of a report, you don't solicit the report, and that it's left to, it sort of ends there. Suffice it to say, well, the law enforcement agencies must look into it. And I'm having the background to say there was an instance of the President saying to the country that there's sabotage at Eskom. Doesn't that somehow raise issue with yourself, Prof?
Yes, maybe let's disaggregate these issues. There is a sabotage at Eskom. If the president makes a statement like that, he doesn't make it lightly. There is an allegation of criminal activities taking place on the ground. The people who are making that allegation are asked to get in touch with those who have the competence to verify the allegations. I have been around long enough, generally in public life for almost 50 years now. I have worked in a related portfolio to what we are talking about now. I know that even the police know that they cannot get an allegation and run with it to the president. They must be able to answer the questions that the president will raise. Have you verified this? We are still investigating. So why are you coming to me? Is there something that you want me to do about it? No, because we are still investigating. You don't do that in this work.
All right. No, fair enough.
Hmm.
You don't do that. But the National Securities Advisor is briefed by, or in a meeting of a briefing, by the CEO of Eskom. So in authority, a person of authority and responsibility. And he points to political corruption, political interference at Eskom, and he names people. Now, 10 months later, since you received that briefing, are you satisfied that substantial action or processing or progress has been made in dealing with it? What other follow-ups have you done? We regard Eskom to be a major player on the security status of the country. People are speaking about the possibility of a collapse of the grid. The president, in his question and answer session to Parliament, the last one, he said that it is an issue that from a security point of view is being looked at so that mitigation and intervention can be done. So this is a serious security issue. 10 months since you were briefed, from July 2022 to May 2023, would you say that sufficient progress has been made, or any follow-ups or any briefings to yourselves have been done on those serious issues?
Okay, let me say something. I had the privilege of listening to the hearings that took place earlier, where you had the SIU, police, and they were saying we've made arrests. What else? They said we've made arrests. Some people have been charged. We have also disruptive activities from our side underway. And I was happy that you did not ask them to specify what they meant by disruptive activities. So I'm saying I listen to that sort of thing. But once I have said to their people at Eskom, interact with the police, it's not my job to go back to them to say, of the people you've mentioned, for instance, where are you with respect to the investigations and so on? What I know, like you are saying, the problem at Eskom is very serious. It goes to the heart of national security because it's energy security, which impacts on the well-being of the nation. What I know is that the antenna of the state system has been raised to this issue. So the progress will be reported at the right platforms at the right time. It's not for me to keep on saying about that specific matter you told me that day, where are you? It's not done that way. By the way, when the relevant authorities deem it appropriate to report these specific issues you are talking about to the president, they will do so. And the president may or may not even tell me that they have reported to him, because his actions do not only depend on what I say. It depends also on his judgment of the issues that are brought to him by relevant authorities, of whom I'm just one.
Okay, thanks, Prof.
Thank you, Chairman.
Final clarities, Prof. So
Yes.
you are categorically saying that Mr. Director was directed by yourselves in July 2022 to report what he had reported to you to the law enforcement agencies. I just wanted for the proper, so that moving forward, all right. So July 2022, he was directed to do that.
Yes.
Right. Then, would you say that at the time when you were briefed, there was a report already available to Eskom, or it was preliminary reporting or an interim report on the intelligence gathering that they were doing? I know in some other days questions have been asked, but I just wanted the
he attached no adjective to say it's preliminary or final. He said a report.
So there was a report of some sort already in July 2022. All right.
Yes.
It's because, Prof, you say we don't. It seemingly nobody has this report, and it seems as if Mr. Director, well, from what you are saying, is the only one that actually has it. We are still got other persons and lead would want to talk to.
Yes.
Right. I think, colleagues, right, is there anything that you would want to add, clarify before we release Prof?
Yes.
That's one thing. That's one thing from me, Chair. Well, thank you very much, Prof, for taking us through these areas which we have asked questions on.
Thank you.
And indeed, I think we really need to thank you for such. There is a report which exists, and then we have been given that synopsis of the report. Haven't you thought that at some stage, let me have this report? Let me ask for this report. Let me have this report. There's no stage that we have had that kind of a situation.
No, I don't have that vainglorious curiosity.
because you're briefed. So it's enough.
It's enough, yes, because what was I going to do with it?
You are assessing reports. You are advising on matters of security, and therefore there might have been something of interest in that report.
No, you don't work that way. You get reports that are deemed to be relevant enough for you to get a full report. If somebody gives you a report which is not enough to enable you to make a judgment, you say so. But what I was told was enough to enable me to make a judgment. Other people who have to see the full report, read it, verify, and so on, will do that. Otherwise, you will be detained in reports which you do not necessarily, for purposes of your work, to see in full.
Oh, okay. Okay, so this report is not necessary for your work.
I'm not saying it's not necessary.
Not necessary.
I'm saying the people who briefed me did not offer it to me, but I felt I was in a position to give the advice that I was asked to give. I can't then say, okay, I've given you the advice, but give me the report. They will give it to me if they think I should be given the report. But also, as I say, you don't just move around gathering reports. You gather reports for specific purposes.
No, I take it, Prof, that this was not a very report in your interest, and therefore.
No, don't put it that way, sir. That one I don't want. I don't want to accept that. I don't want one day to come to your house for dinner, and when I see a document which interests me for some reason or another, or a picture, and I say, can I have this picture? And you think I'm collecting intelligence reports. That's the point I'm making.
Yes.
It's not
the context of my question is that you went into a meeting, you received the briefing. Now you know that briefing emanates from a report, and that report you have never received. You have received synopsis of that report, and there's some expectation that you said is clear from those who were given that kind of report, and that's why you went to the police and met the commissioner in absence of the report, but on the basis of the briefing, and out of all that, there's absolutely nowhere that it comes to your mind that let me have this kind of a report, though I've given the police to have verification of certain things that relate to the report, and from my own intuition, there's absolutely no need for me to have that kind of a report. So the context of asking that question is based on that fact.
Don't absolutize that, because I said to you, and these are caveats which you must put into that summary. I said, for instance, that this is a minister and his CEO. I must assume that they work together daily. He must know more about these issues than I do. And if he knows more about that report and the report itself, maybe he has it, he is the appropriate authority to keep such a report. Appropriate authority to keep such a report. They can't give me everything they have. But if they want to know what should they do with what they have, I must direct them to the right authority, which is what I've done. These things, the question is, do they come back to the president? And I'm saying they do come back to the president in one way or the other. I should not treat myself as the only conduit to the president, because that will be overestimating my role in the system.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much, Chair. I finalized my questions. Thank you.
Much. Honorable Hadebe.
No, yeah, thanks, Chair. My question is informed about what you've just asked, and the Prof responded by saying it's not his role or duty to follow up, and I somewhat agree with the Prof. And the nice thing about Prof, he also said if one were to come to him on the street to seek advice, he will gladly offer that advice. Prof, will we be correct to say then those that are entrusted with the responsibility to make a follow-up and find out what has happened and how far are they with the cases as been reported to them, that is the responsibility of the Eskom board, the minister, and the group chief executive, and in this case now the newly appointed acting group chief executive officer, understanding the law of succession. Would you think we are correct to analyze and arrive at that conclusion in terms of pointing us towards the right direction, if you were to give us that advice?
I guess the Justice Committee in Parliament might want to check whether the NPA, but you also, I guess, you have the authority to interact with the NPA just to see where matters are and so on. And again, to go back to the police, I listened to your interaction with the board. I don't know whether how the board wants to approach this matter now that they are a new board and they are getting to know things they did not know before. I don't know how they are approaching these things. So what interaction you need to have with the board on this matter depends also on what the board sees as its own role on this matter. Thanks.
But I'm saying in terms of the statutory obligation, who are the relevant and appropriate authorities that we should pursue in finding out the latest update and what has been done in relation to these matters, so that we do not crucify the wrong Jesus?
Yeah, no, sure. But as you say, statutory obligation, do you have a statutory obligation to say, to find out where a specific investigation is at? I'm asking from your side, do you have that statutory obligation?
As I've earlier indicated, ours is to follow public purse and any issue that relates to the misappropriation of funds.
Sure.
I also, it is indicated that some of the function might fall outside our scope. In this regard, there is an accusation and allegation of misappropriations of taxpayers' money. Yeah. And in order for us to pursue that, we are somewhat dealing with issues that ought to be dealt by other agencies. So in pursuing our mandate, would therefore be forced to go to certain agencies who have other portfolio committees that they report to. But ours is to pursue and follow public purse and ensure that whoever has been alleged and is implicated in the misappropriation of taxpayers' money, that person is brought to book.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Your mandate is to check whether the public purse is being abused or misused. And the question is whether you can make that determination without necessarily knowing where the investigations, criminal investigations are at. If you can't, for some reason or other, you might then have to have bilateral meetings with your, let me call them, sister committees to see what kind of cooperation is required in order to enable you to discharge your own mandate.
Thank you, Prof. You have assisted.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Prof, I did indicate, and Honorable Hadebe has touched on this, and this will be my final set of questions.
Yes.
When you say that if we meet you in the street, we could ask, well, let's assume that this was the street.
Yeah.
I'm still at the point, Chairperson, Prof. Does it not raise eyebrows to the point that action beyond just saying go to the police, when an authority in the form of a CEO puts it to yourselves that in light of state capture, by the way, that there are individuals, and he names them, that it's politicians, and knowing the extent to which, I mean, I would imagine anybody who captures Eskom or is involved in Eskom corruption may have in one way or the other covered their bases in terms of, because the police are not immune to this corruption, right, that takes place. I still don't get a sense that a CEO reporting a matter as serious as this one, that it was taken up with the kind of seriousness that it deserves. Because anybody capturing Eskom through corruption would have covered their bases and closed the loops, plugged the loops in the value chain of law enforcement agencies, when we know that they too have not been immune to state capture. On hindsight, could you not have handled this matter a bit differently?
No. No, you see, Chair, we as lawmakers, I'm saying we because I used to be a lawmaker, we make laws and we say, without fear or favor. Now, it doesn't matter who is allegedly involved. Due process has to take its course. And the question is whether, because you see, it can raise your eyebrows, but at the end of the day, you have to sit back and say, due process must take its course. Have I taken steps to ensure that that happens? If the answer is yes, that's without fear or favor.
Okay.
Yes, Chair.
Now, finally, Prof. That said, right?
Yes.
In your assessment, since that matter was reported to you, would you say, knowing what we know now, that progress has been made on the set of allegations and pursuing them in terms of investigations to deal with them?
Well, let me put it this way. You know, as I was saying, I was listening to the hearing involving people from the SAPS, SIU, and so on. And I was wondering to myself, for instance, as I said to you, if they were giving that report to a meeting in a closed door, would they possibly have said more? And I say possibly. I was speculating.
Fair enough.
I said possibly they would have said more. So I listened to the advice that Mr. Somia was giving, and I take it to heart, but I indicated also that some of the things he was talking about are things that we are already doing. If I were to give you an advice, you need sometimes to check whether some of these things, if you want to know more than you can be given on this platform, whether you shouldn't also try to do it in closed sessions. This is an advice I'm giving on the street. But as I was saying, I was listening, Chair, you kept on saying, this is the last. Politicians have a reputation now of promising and not delivering. Please deliver. Okay, Chair. Okay, Chair.
Come on.
Lastly,
Are you tired now? The last.
okay. Prof, I want to take this opportunity to thank you. I think you have provided a very important clarity for us in that the communication on some of these matters, particularly the intelligence report and the briefing of names, was not an informal or ad hoc process, but rather was a formal process, because an impression has been created that in large parts these matters were dealt with in passing, and maybe to borrow a terminology you've used, in the street, that would meet and you would share. And so the fact that these were formal matters, it sets into motion for us the key critical question as to what were the formal responses of those with whom these matters were reported to, or the ones who were reporting. So in this case, it would be Mr. Director himself, the Minister of Public Enterprises, and the law enforcement agencies, in terms of what it is that they did once this information was sourced. I'm going to ask colleagues that legal writes to Mr. Director to solicit this report from him, and because it forms the basis upon which the allegations were made. We'll make determinations later about how it is, but I think he has to hand it over, because it seemingly he has it, and it was the basis upon which the briefing was done. If not him, then those that commissioned, rather performed the investigation. Because unless there is a solid basis for the discussion, it continues to be a theater of speculation, which is untested and unsubstantiated. What we know for a fact is that an investigation was done, and the report in one form or the other is available, and we need to get that. I know the SIU is also doing that. So I think that the clarities you have provided this morning, Prof, have been helpful to us, in that they take away the finger pointing. It's just a matter now of engaging with Mr. Director again on the due processes that were employed in commissioning that report, because as indicated, the Prof, or the other Prof now, the former chair of the Eskom board, was aware an investigation was taking place. Former board member Mavoso seemingly was also aware, but not all board members. The new board, in one way or the other, was briefed as well on this. If colleagues will remember from the last meeting, a board member did say that when they met at the academy, some sort of briefing was given. What we don't have is the documentation which backed up the briefings. And that is what is elusive in this case. And why it's required is that it must be handed over to the law enforcement agencies for them to investigate can't, so I think that's that clarities you have provided, Prof, this morning are very, very helpful, because they take away the he said, I said phenomenon, and formally says the meeting was a formal one. I want to then say, colleagues, I need your list of persons whom you would like us to invite by the end of business today. Honorable Van Minen has sent hers. I've received it on top of what we discussed on Wednesday, because we need to schedule. And colleagues, it's seemingly that the week available, the days available for us will be the week of the 19th of June to have these interactions. Next week, we will have SAA and SABC for 2 days. And then we will take it forward. We will try and get a briefing from Parliamentary Legal just to give us a sense of how far we are in their assessment so far on these matters. And then we will conclude on that. I think though the next person of interest is Brigadier Berger. And then we will take it from there. So I think whatever meeting we have next on this matter will be with Brigadier Berger as soon as we have set down a date. But at the same time, colleagues, I would ask you finally to apply your minds on the way forward a bit more, because we must avoid a situation of a revolving door approach to meetings. These hearings and interactions must arrive at a logical conclusion at some point, and we must apply our minds on how we tie them down. So I think we'll find time to deal with that. So on that note, I want to thank the National Security Advisor to the President, Prof. Mufmadi, for appearing before us this morning. And I want to thank you, colleagues, and request you that by close of business today, I've received your lists, so that over the course of the weekend, we can begin the process of scheduling and interacting with the persons of interest to us. Colleagues, on that note, the meeting stands adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a blessed weekend.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Cancel.
Long live the chair. Long live the chair.
When I walk on